NFL stadium revolution.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing because you look at the league, you've got all the recent new stadiums. You got MetLife Stadium, US Bank Stadium, Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Allegiant Stadium, SoFi Stadium. Most of these are just a couple years old, so I'll still put them in the new category. Um, and then you've got the Tennessee Titans are set to open a new stadium in, I believe it's 2026. Then the Buffalo Bills are opening a new stadium in 2027, and both the Jacksonville Jaguars and Carolina Panthers just got approval to make massive renovations to their stadiums. So to me, it does feel like we are in the midst of an NFL stadium revolution. Does it feel that way to you?
A little bit, it kind of reminds me of the early 2000s in the NFL when, New England got a new stadium and Seattle got a new stadium and Philly got a new stadium. And a lot of these the Browns in 99, obviously getting a new stadium. So a lot of these new stadiums are, getting up there in age, are 20, 30 years old. And these stadiums that are being replaced are the ones that have been around for, 40, 50 years. It wouldn't shock me, even though it sounds like the Kansas City owners are cheap, if somewhere along the line the Chiefs get upgrades or renovation of their stadium, because that stadium, I believe, is over 50 years old.
Yeah, I heard that as of right now, the Chiefs and the Royals actually might cross the state line and build stadiums in Kansas.
That would be interesting. And, I think the other interesting point about these stadiums is we've seen it with the Giants and Jets. We're seeing it with Buffalo. We're seeing it here potentially in Cleveland. There was even talk about Chicago at one point.
Yep.
And that is these stadiums now, they don't have to be in the heart of downtown of whatever respective city it is. They can be in a suburb or they can be in a neighboring state. So it's really, I think, about creating modern day facilities with, modern day infrastructure and getting all the Final Fours and the WrestleManias and the Super Bowls and all of that stuff. And I don't think that these owners really care where the stadium is as long as they're putting more money in their pocket.
Yeah. And you bring up a very interesting point. I think a lot of these new stadiums and stadium renovations that you're seeing involve adding domes to these respective stadiums. That's what's happening in Tennessee. Buffalo's keeping their stadium open air, but
Jackson. And a lot of them, by the way, are already negotiating with the Final Four, with the NFL, with WWE, with all these properties to say, hey, as soon as this stadium opens, you're getting a major premium live event.
Exactly.
You're getting the Super. So it really is a partnership in that. And, as we talked about, I think that that's one of the reasons why SummerSlam is happening this year in Cleveland, so they can sort of test the waters with what a bigger event could look like in Cleveland, depending on where the new Brown Stadium could be.
Yeah, which I think, here's my thought on that, and I'm glad you brought this up, because that's kind of why I put this topic in. Given that we have all these teams building new stadiums and renovating their current stadiums, I do feel like it puts pressure on the Browns and it kind of puts them behind the 8 ball, because we've had this whole thing with Brook Park or renovating the current stadium. Well, now you see all these teams around you building new stadiums, renovating their current stadiums. You have to do something. And
well, some of it is not on the Browns. Some of it is obviously on the city of Cleveland.
Right.
And there's a lot of rules involved in that. There's some rumors floating around that there's a law against moving the Browns out of downtown Cleveland when it was built in '99, which I could totally see happening after what Art Modell did to the Browns, moving them to Baltimore. But yeah, I mean, the thing about these new stadiums, again, they're cool, they're flashy. I know a lot of people are upset that, there's going to be less snow games in the NFL and less weather games. Well, you know what? There's less weather games to begin with, even at these outdoor stadiums. I mean, we get 1 to 2 snow games a year.
And they're
So,
mostly in Green Bay.
yeah, I mean Buffalo. You remember had the playoff game this past year against Pittsburgh. Remember they had to move the game, which I didn't even think it was that bad. I thought they could have played on that. That's just me. But I started at 4 o'clock on Monday. It looked like it didn't even snow there.
Yeah, I still remember when they had to move the game between the Browns and Bills out of Buffalo and play it in Detroit because it was so bad in Buffalo.
Oh, you want a story? I got an even better story for you. It was December 26th, 2010. It was the day after Christmas. It is a Sunday, and the Philadelphia Eagles are supposed to host the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday Night Football. And there is a snowstorm where the city of Philadelphia basically has to issue an emergency. They can't play the game on Sunday. They move it to a Tuesday night. And my Philadelphia Eagles, led by Andy Reid, used to be a choke artist before he got Patrick Mahomes, lost to good old Joe freaking Webb, wide receiver of the Minnesota Vikings, who was playing quarterback that night.
um, so I do think it's interesting, and you could also tie Lucas Oil Stadium into this whole thing because it was just announced that the Colts are going to get to host the Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, and WrestleMania.
They are, and that stadium though is like 16 years old now, so it's got maybe half of its mileage already under its belt.
Yeah. So I just thought that was an interesting little point to bring up. But I know there's some other things you want to talk about with Brandon Aiyuk.
So this is interesting. You can't even really find this on his TikTok because I believe he took it down and people were screen grabbing it. But apparently, Brandon Aiyuk took a photo and posted it on TikTok of him watching Commanders film. Now he has been open about wanting to play with Commanders or wanting to play with Jane Daniels, but maybe going to Pittsburgh and playing under Russell Wilson slash Justin Fields and Mike Tomlin. He's had many conversations with GM John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, who have assured him that he wants to get paid. He's going to get paid. He's a big part of the offense, but he just doesn't sound happy in San Francisco. And I personally think one of the reasons is because he knows they're going to have to pay Mr. Irrelevant $55 million and knows it's not a good idea.
Yeah. Um, Plus the fact that what did the 49ers do with their first round pick? Let me think. They drafted a wide receiver, Ricky Pearsall.
And
So,
Aiyuk or Debo have to get traded. And there was
yeah.
rumors out there that Debo was going to get traded to New England or Buffalo, and then they couldn't come up with compensation. I mean, theoretically, San Francisco, you don't have to trade either one of your receivers if you want to move on from Brock Purdy, which I don't know. Kyle Shanahan could take Jimmy Garoppolo to the Super Bowl. If Trey Lance didn't get hurt, maybe he did it with him. Brock Purdy, he was Mr. Irrelevant. All of a sudden, he's very good with all those weapons, but we've seen him when Trent Williams is out. We've seen him when George Kittle was out. We've seen him with Brandon Aiyuk out. He's a different quarterback, so we know the answer to those questions. So,
yeah, go back and look at the game between the 49ers and the Browns, and we know what happened there.
yeah, and do you remember the Monday night game last year when Minnesota was, reeling and Kirk Cousins on prime time played the best game of his primetime career and beat San Francisco?
Yeah.
So this is very interesting for the Niners' perspective because they have to pay Brock Purdy in 2 years. And this is a fun fact I learned about NFL contracts that I again learned this week that I don't think a lot of people know. And that is, do you realize, Josh, that if Brock Purdy wasn't drafted, he would be eligible to get paid right now? But because of the fact he was drafted, he has to play out his 3 year contract without signing an extension.
Huh. So you're saying if he had gone undrafted, he'd be eligible for an extension right now?
He'd be eligible for, he'd be in the Tua camp, he'd be in the Jordan Love camp, he'd be in all those camps where they are eligible for extensions right now. Dak.
Yeah. I think Jordan Love. On that note, I do think Jordan Love is the next contract to get done. Uh, but that's just me.
The Dak one's interesting
Yeah,
because I know we don't have a topic planned on this. Maybe we could plan it for the next time we do a show together. Um, who do you pay first? Because I can make the argument theoretically the guy you probably leave out is CD Lamb, just of the nature of the position. You got to pay your quarterback and you got to pay your edge rusher.
yeah, and they also have Mike McCarthy on the final year of his contract too.
Yeah, and the difference here is obviously Shanahan's not going anywhere. We don't think LaFleur's going anywhere in Green Bay. Listen, Jacksonville just paid Trevor Lawrence a handsome dollar. A lot of people in the week think Trevor Lawrence has underperformed and think Brock Purdy is better than Trevor Lawrence right now. So San Francisco is not going to be able to afford Trent Williams, George Kittle, Aiyuk, Debo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, who they just paid a ton of money to.
And who he's now on the cover of Madden too.
He
So
is. Which, will he break the Ben curse the way Patrick Mahomes did? We don't know.
right, I mean McCaffrey's already suffered a number of injuries, so I don't know if you would really consider it as the Madden curse, but nonetheless, think about what the 40 you mentioned it. The 49ers are going to have to pay all these guys. They have this open window right now. And what have they done with it? They've gotten to the Super Bowl twice and lost to who? Both times. Patrick Mahomes.
And you can make an argument in both of those games. If they make one play, they're 2-0 in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Which, again, the NFL was a game of inches, not feet. But they had to cash in here. And
Exactly.
I do think like this year, the Detroit Lions, Philly, maybe you can make an argument for Green Bay. To me, those are your top four in the NFC in terms of contention. I know you really like what the Rams have done. I don't know how good they're going to be without Aaron Donald. You know me and you disagree a lot on Aaron Donald, but I do think he was the heartbeat of that defense. But and I know you like Seattle more than I do, but I think we can now both acknowledge that San Francisco is better than them, and Seattle has a rookie head coach. So to me, it's like if they don't win it this year, and Kansas City, it's going to be very hard for them to repeat. I'm not saying they can't do it, but it's going to be very hard for them to get back to the Super Bowl 101 repeat. Nobody's ever done it.
Right.
So to me, it's like, and by the way, somebody made this point I didn't think about. They were all healthy last year outside of that 3-game stretch.
Yeah. I mean, they San Francisco you you can't even deny this. They got lucky to win the NFC Championship game against Detroit.
Oh,
Uh,
I thought Dan Campbell, who I absolutely love, cost them the game.
that's what I'm saying. San Francisco got lucky in that regard to win the NFC Championship.
Speaking of Aiyuk, how about that play where the ball went right in his face mask?
Yeah. And, you know, in that regard, it does make me wonder, like, has the window already, being that San Francisco is 0-2 in the Super Bowl, has the window already closed for them?
Well, I don't think you can say that when they are the betting favorite to win the conference. And by the way, they're tied favorites to win the Super Bowl.
I I do hear you on that, but I think it's a fair question to ask at the same time because again, they're 0-2 in the Super Bowl in the last 4 years, I believe it is.
Yeah, and in those other two, they watched NFC Championship games, and that's a lot of games, a lot of mileage on the bodies of those players.
Right. So,
So,
again, that's why I think it's a fair question to ask. Has their window already closed?
well, we're just two talking heads talking football in July. We'll make our official predictions come September.
Correct.